Okay, I want to start today by asking you to do something a little, well, a little uncomfortable. I want you to close your eyes for a second. Seriously. Just for a moment, wherever you are, I'm going to say a single word. I want you to capture the very first image or feeling that hits your brain. Try not to filter it.
All right, I'm game. What's the word?
The word is fear.
Right.
What did you see?
Instinctively, honestly, I pictured a dark alley, or maybe that cold drop in your stomach when you realize you've lost your wallet in a foreign country. It's panic. It's like a monster under the bed.
Exactly. Horror, threat. It's that biological impulse to just run away screaming. That is how we are culturally and biologically wired to process the word fear. It's fight or flight, and mostly flight. But, and this is where we're going today, we have a huge problem.
A translation problem, really.
Exactly. The problem is that we have taken that specific definition, that horror movie definition, and we've plastered it over a massive theological concept, specifically within the context of the Qur'an. And the deep dive we are doing today into our source material suggests that by doing that, we have made a catastrophic translation error.
Yeah, it's a classic case of lost in translation, but the stakes here aren't just semantic. We aren't just talking about getting a vocabulary word wrong. We're talking about getting the entire psychological framework of relationship with the divine completely wrong.
Which is exactly our mission today. We're looking at a really fascinating source that breaks down the linguistics and the psychology of how we talk about God. The author argues that we've taken a highly nuanced, multi-layered system and essentially flattened it into a single terrifying word, fear, or in Urdu and Hindi, the word they use is dar.
And the source is actually very aggressive about this distinction. It points out that the Qur'an uses 3 distinct specific technical terms: Khauf, Khashyah, and Taqwa. And the big headline here is that none of them, literally 0 of them, actually equate to scared horror.
Which is a massive claim to make, especially considering how many people grow up absolutely terrified of religious authority. It feels a bit like rewriting history. So I really want to stress test this today. We're going to dismantle this horror definition and rebuild it using the source's 3 pillars. And if this material is right, by the end of this deep dive, you'll see why terror makes you run away, but real fear, as defined here, is actually a mechanism for growth.
It's the difference between being trapped in a cage and being handed a compass.
I really like that image.
Wow.
But I have to play devil's advocate immediately, because if the text says fear in English and people genuinely feel fear, isn't that just, well, fear? Why does the source insist on splitting hairs here? Isn't fear just a basic survival mechanism?
It is, but precision changes your behavior. The source starts by clearing the air on the very first term, which is Khauf. In common English translations, yes, this just gets written as fear. But the source defines Khauf strictly as the realization of consequence.
Realization of consequence. That sounds very clinical. Like a legal term, not an emotion.
Well, that's exactly the point. It's cognitive. It's not just emotional panic. The source uses a really great analogy to strip away that ghost story vibe. Imagine you're driving your car. You're doing maybe 90 in a 60 zone. Suddenly you see a really sharp curve coming up, or you see brake lights ahead. What happens in your brain?
My brain snaps to attention. I realize if I don't slow down, I crash. My heart rate probably spikes too.
Exactly. That realization. That is Khauf. Now here is the million-dollar question. In that split second, do you scream, throw your hands in the air, and let go of the steering wheel?
No, of course not. That would kill me. I grip the wheel tighter. I hit the brakes. I hyper-focus on the road.
Precisely. And this is the crucial distinction the source makes. Terror or dar paralyzes you. It makes you freeze or flee. Khauf, this awareness of consequence, gives you direction. It forces you to adjust your behavior to secure your safety. It didn't make you crash. It saved you from crashing.
So Khauf isn't about the emotion of being scared. It's about the functional feedback loop.
Yes, it's information processing. The source also calls it protective Khauf. Think about a parent and a child. If a toddler reaches for a hot stove, the parent yells, "Stop!"
Right. And the kid gets scared. They might even cry.
The kid gets startled, sure. But is the parent trying to traumatize the child? Is the overarching goal to give the kid nightmares for the rest of the week?
No, obviously not. The goal is to save their hand from getting burned.
That is Khauf. The parent, and by extension the divine in this theology, isn't using fear to assert dominance or be a bully. They're using the awareness of consequence to prevent harm.
There's another angle here the source mentions, which is productive Khauf. This one really clicked for me regarding education, because I definitely lived this when I was younger.
The student analogy. Yeah, this is probably the most relatable one. A student studies for finals. Why?
Because they're afraid of failing. Or, let's be honest, afraid of their parents seeing the report card.
Right, but that fear of failure doesn't usually make them hide under the bed or drop out of school. It makes them open the textbook, it drives action. If they had zero fear of failure, zero Khauf, they wouldn't study at all. So in this context, fear is literally the fuel for preparation.
Okay, so if we strip away the religious baggage, Khauf is just cause and effect.
It's a high-functioning awareness of cause and effect, and the source points out a theological contradiction to prove this. It quotes a verse often used to describe the righteous, which says, "No fear shall be upon them, nor shall they grieve."
Wait, let's break that down. If the goal of the religion is to make you fear God, why is the ultimate reward the removal of fear? That seems entirely counterintuitive.
Exactly. If the divine wanted you in a state of terror, the ultimate state would be eternal terror. But it's not. The source argues that Khauf is a tool for this world. It's a mechanism for safety while we are navigating the road. Once you're home, once you're safe, you don't need to grip the steering wheel anymore. The fear evaporates because the danger is gone.
Okay, that shifts the baseline significantly. We've moved from monsters to consequences.
Mm-hmm.
But the source level's up here. We get to the second term, which feels a lot heavier. Khashyah.
Yeah, Khashyah is much more sophisticated. The source notes that in the text, this word is almost exclusively reserved for people with ilm, with knowledge, scientists, scholars, people who truly understand how things work.
See, that seems backwards to me. Usually we say we fear what we don't know. The unknown is what's scary. Why does knowledge create fear?
In the horror sense, yes, we fear the unknown. But Khashyah is defined as respect-based awareness. Think about a virus. You and I might be afraid of a virus because we don't want to get sick, but a virologist, someone who looks at that virus under a microscope and understands exactly how it hijacks a cell, their fear is completely different.
It's deeper. It's based on the magnitude of the reality. They actually know what it's capable of.
It's awe. It's recognizing the sheer scale of what you're dealing with. The source uses the judge analogy. Imagine you are standing before a Supreme Court justice, or a king, or someone you consider a massive intellectual authority. Are you shaking in terror like you're watching a horror movie?
No, I'm not screaming.
Yeah.
But I'm definitely not checking my phone either. I'm not slouching. I'm probably watching my grammar very closely.
You are hyper-composed. You are serious. That feeling, that weight in the room, that is Khashyah. It's not about the person hurting you. It's about you recognizing their station.
There's a relational aspect to this one too, isn't there?
Yeah.
The source mentions the fear of disappointing someone.
That is the emotional hook. Think about a mentor you deeply admire, or a parent you actually have a really good relationship with. You don't want to let them down. Not because they'll beat you, but because you value their opinion of you. You value the relationship itself.
So Khauf is about my safety, like I don't want to crash my car, but Khashyah is about the relationship. I don't want to disappoint.
Perfect summary. Khashyah protects the connection. Terror breaks the connection.
Which brings us to the big one. The heavyweight champion of misunderstood words. Taqwa. I see this translated everywhere as God-fearing.
Taqwa. Yeah, if you open almost any English translation of the Qur'an, you will see this translated as fear of God. Have taqwa becomes fear God.
But the source says this is linguistically wrong. Or just lazy.
It's linguistically lazy.
Yeah.
The root of the word taqwa comes from wiqaya, which literally means to protect or to shield.
To protect. That sounds like defense, not fear.
It is defense. The source defines taqwa as spiritual intelligence. It's a defensive posture. It's about protecting yourself from the wrong path, protecting your heart from ego, protecting your community from injustice.
So when the text says have taqwa of God, it doesn't mean be scared that God will hit you.
No, it means be vigilant. The classic analogy, and the source brings this up, is walking through a path of thorns.
Okay, let's visualize that. I'm walking through a dense, thorny forest. I'm wearing really expensive clothes, maybe silk. What do we do?
You gather your clothes close to your body, you watch your step, you move with extreme precision because you don't want to get snagged. That action, that hyper-awareness, that carefulness is taqwa.
I love that image. It's not emotional suffocation, it's just paying attention.
It's mindfulness. In a modern context, think of it like driving in a school zone when the lights are flashing. You aren't paralyzed with terror, but you are acutely aware of your speed, the crosswalks, the environment. Why? Because the stakes are high. That is
Right.
taqwa.
So let's synthesize this before we move on. We have Khauf as consequence, Khashyah as reverence, and Taqwa as self-defense. And the source is arguing that we have basically replaced this complex three-part psychological system with just terror.
And that is a tragedy, according to the source, because terror creates a completely different psychological response.
Well, this leads us right into the brand image of the divine. If the text is actually so nuanced, why does it feel so heavy? The source makes a really logical argument here about how the text introduces itself, kind of like the opening credits.
It's a fascinating point regarding frequency versus severity. The argument goes like this. If the primary goal of the Quran was to instill fear or terror, the text would conceptually begin with titles that reflect that power. It would start with, in the name of the compeller, the subduer, the destroyer.
Al-Jabbar, Al-Qahar, those names exist in the theology, right? They aren't hidden.
They do exist. But the text doesn't start there. It begins with Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. In the name of God, the most gracious, the most merciful. And the source emphasizes that this phrase isn't just a one-off. It is repeated at the start of every single chapter, every surah, except one.
And in this context, repetition is a signal, right? It's not just filling space on the page.
Repetition signals centrality. If you repeat something 113 times, you are shouting, "This is the lens. Read everything through this lens." You were supposed to read the warnings through the lens of mercy.
But somewhere along the line, that lens got cracked. The source pivots to the psychological impact of getting this wrong. It compares terror-based religion versus love and respect-based religion.
It's the difference between contraction and expansion. The source argues that terror creates anxiety and avoidance. Think about it. If I am genuinely terrified of you, if I think you are a literal monster, do I want to be near you?
No, I want to be as far away as possible. I might obey you because I don't want to get hit, but I'm definitely looking for the exit. I'm not calling you up for a casual chat.
Exactly. Avoidance. But respect-based fear. Khashyah. That creates discipline. It builds character. The source says a fear-based religion controls people, but a love-based religion transforms people.
This raises a massive historical question, which the source tackles head-on. If the text is emphasizing mercy, growth, and this compass dynamic, why is the cultural narrative so obsessed with fear, punishment, and fire? Why did fear take over the marketing department?
It's a great question, and the answer isn't just one thing. The source offers three main reasons, and they are a mix of psychology, history, and sociology. The first one is brutally simple, the psychology of speed.
Fear is faster than love.
It really is. Think about the amygdala in your brain. It's your threat detection center. If I tell you the divine loves you and wants you to grow, that requires your prefrontal cortex. You have to sit, reflect, internalize it. It takes time. It takes processing power.
But if I tell you if you don't do this, you will burn...
Bam! Hijack. Immediate reaction. It hacks the nervous system. If you want a quick result, if you want someone to stop doing something right now, fear is the most efficient tool in the toolkit. It's a shortcut.
Which leads right to the second reason. Social control. We can't ignore the political reality here.
No, we really can't. Historically, religion wasn't just about personal spirituality. It was the Constitution. It was the penal code. It was the framework for social order in very lawless times.
So if you need to keep people from stealing or killing, you need a strong deterrent. You can't just hope they feel reverence.
Exactly. If you need to maintain discipline in a society, secure obedience, and limit questioning, the fear model is incredibly useful. The source puts it in a really interesting way. The fear model creates obedient followers. The love model creates independent thinkers.
And independent thinkers are a lot harder to manage.
Much harder. So historically, the volume was turned way up on the fear aspect to ensure compliance. It's simply easier to govern a terrified populace than a contemplative one.
Then there's the third reason, which is about the medium of information itself. We're talking about a time of low literacy.
Right. For centuries, most people weren't reading the source text themselves. They were relying on a preacher, a translator. And the source notes, if the preacher was scary, the religion became scary.
It's a centuries-long game of telephone.
It is. And combined with cultural conditioning, and this is huge. Think about parenting in the past. If your father was strict and punitive, if your schoolmaster beat you with a cane, you automatically apply that same template to God. You project your strict father onto the divine.
That makes so much sense. We build our image of the ultimate authority based on the earthly authorities we know. If our authorities rule by terror, we assume God does too.
Precisely. It's a massive psychological projection.
Now, I want to pivot to something the source is very careful about.
Yeah.
Because when we have these types of conversations, it's really easy to swing to the exact opposite extreme. The source isn't suggesting some hippie version of spirituality where everything is cool, there are no rules, and everyone gets a participation trophy.
No, and that's a crucial distinction to make. The source validates that the text contains warnings. It contains justice. It contains real accountability. The consequence is real. But it reframes the intent of those warnings.
This is where the doctor analogy comes in. I thought this is the absolute clearest way to explain it.
It clarifies everything. Imagine you go to a doctor, he runs some tests, looks at you, and says, if you don't stop eating this much sugar, your kidneys are going to fail. And it will be incredibly painful.
Is that a threat? Is the doctor trying to terrorize me?
No, it's a diagnosis. It's a statement of fact, cause and effect. If you jump off a cliff, you will fall. Gravity isn't threatening you. It's just gravity.
So the doctor's warning is actually an act of care.
The source calls it a warning for moral awakening. The doctor is using a scary reality kidney failure to motivate you to make a healthy choice. That is not the same as a tyrant holding a gun to your head saying, obey me or else.
Yeah.
The tyrant wants submission. The doctor wants your well-being.
And the parenting analogy follows that up perfectly. We touched on this earlier, but let's go deeper into the styles.
The source asks us to look at parenting styles. Think of a parent who only pampers.
Creates a spoiled, weak child who can't handle the reality of the world.
Exactly. Now, a parent who only yells and punishes.
Creates trauma, secrecy, and rebellion. The kid leaves home at 18 and never calls again.
So the perfect parent, and by extension, the divine model in the text maintains balance. Justice without mercy is cruel, but mercy without justice is weak. The source argues the Qur'an balances these perfectly. It's not about removing the warning, it's about understanding the warning as an act of nurturing.
It's tough love in the truest, purest sense.
Yes. It's the realization that because you are valued, your actions matter. And because your actions matter, there are consequences if you go off track. You aren't insignificant enough to be ignored.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, we come back to the ultimate nature of the divine as described in the source material. If we strip away the bad translations, the political control, and the scary preaching, what is actually left?
The source ends on a very emotional reality. It says that despite how people have branded the divine as a source of terror, the text actually describes a being that gives peace to the heart, a being that calls people back after they make mistakes.
Raḥmatullāhi Khashyah.
My mercy encompasses all things. That's the verse the source highlights. It emphasizes that the door of repentance is always open. The goal isn't to catch you slipping. The goal is to catch you when you fall.
That shifts the entire directional flow of spirituality. The source says the goal shouldn't be to run away from God, which is what you do when you're terrified, but to return to God.
Which is the natural reaction to safety. You run towards safety. If you view the divine as a source of safety and growth, you run towards it. If you view it as a monster, you run away. It's that simple. And that directional shift changes everything about how a person lives their life.
It really reframes the whole human experience. It changes it from a test you're just trying to survive to a relationship you're actively trying to build.
And that relationship is built on Khauf, awareness, Khashyah, reverence, and Taqwa, mindfulness, not horror.
So here is the thought I want to leave you with today. We've talked a lot about theology, but the source implicitly challenges us to apply this psychology in our daily lives.
Right. It goes way beyond just reading a text.
Try swapping the word fear for awareness of consequence or respectful awareness, not just in religion, but at work, in your relationships, with your own personal goals.
Think about it at work. If you replace, I'm terrified of getting fired, with, I have a respectful awareness of the standards here, how does that change you?
If you're terrified, you hide your mistakes. You shift blame. You stay quiet in meetings. You basically get ulcers.
But if you have respectful awareness, you proactively fix mistakes. You seek feedback. You grow. It moves you from reactive panic to proactive growth.
And that is the difference between a life lived in a cage and a life lived with a compass. So think about what's guiding you today. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. We'll catch you next time.